right, hello and welcome, International Kriegsspiel Society fans and followers. This is Umpire James, and we are here again tonight doing a after-action review report of a recently completed play-by-post game, loosely related to the Third Battle of Winchester and the American Civil War. Um, Yeah, so we have quite a few here tonight that are a few players and that are here to talk about their experiences, which I'm excited to hear from them. I also want to recognize the umpires that helped a lot in completing this game. Stephen, Great Gold, and Evergreen. Let me see if I'm forgetting anyone else. I think those were the primary umpires. Yep, that's it. So yeah, we all took turns doing updates, and they were instrumental in making this happen. So appreciate their support on this. So this is the Battle of Winchester. Um, I selected it first because of the map. So I like to see what Civil War battles are available, are out there, what kind of maps are available. And the Library of Congress has the best source that I've found, but they don't have every battle, but they do have the major ones. And I was trying to find a new map, something that hadn't been done in the Kriegsspiel Society before, and I came across the Winchester one, which I really liked because had a very varied terrain. As you can see, it's got city in the southwest corner. It's got some pretty large mountains and hills and topography. It's got some fairly large forested sections and rivers, and then also a section with more flat and open. So a good mix of terrain, good amount of roads. So in my mind, a perfect map for a Civil War battle. So I looked. Once I had the map, I looked up, the history, and there had actually been several battles fought at Winchester. Being at the northern end of Virginia, it exchanged hands a lot between the Union and the Confederacy, and so and there's a key point heading down into the Shenandoah Valley. So there's actually quite a few battles there, but I loosely based this scenario on the third one where the Union, the Winchesters, controlled by General Early and his army, and the Union is coming to try and take it under General Sheridan. I did change it though. I think, if my memory serves right, the Union won the battle, and they had pretty good numbers to do it. It was like 40,000 Union versus, I can't remember exactly, something like 10 or 15,000 Confederates. So the Confederates were way outnumbered and were unable to hold it. I balanced the numbers more in an effort of giving both sides a fairly even chance. Of course, the Confederates still had less because they did have the defenders' advantage. And it did turn out fairly even. Well, I'll explain what happened, and then we'll explain the conclusion. So, in terms of objectives, basically the Union needed to get in and take Winchester and try to defeat Early's army if possible. Confederates were just trying to prevent that. The Union had the option to approach anywhere from the east, and they opted to send the majority of their army kind of up this main route, but with a third partial part, the Army of West Virginia under Crook came up this way. The Confederates chose an interesting strategy, so they kind of split their army in two, leaving one back in the city in the rear to build defenses, and their other half to deploy pretty far forward, basically as far forward as they could, and launch a surprise ambush, which we'll get into. So this is already partially into the beginning of it, but they were hidden in the woods here and here on the hill, and then here in the woods here, expecting the Union. There's only a couple roads the Union could really use to come in from the east, and so they rightly predicted that they'd be coming up these roads, which they did. Um, so as the battle unfolded, you can see here this is 8 a.m. in the morning, so the Union's already crossed. This is the Opequon Creek. I may be mispronouncing that. They're already starting to cross and realize that the Confederates are much more forward deployed than they'd expected. They're already under heavy artillery fire, and the Confederate position is here on top of this hill. Pretty strong position. They've got to cross this creek and go up a hill to attack them. And then at this point in time, at 8 o'clock, General Rhodes had launched his ambush attack in the side and caught these Union by surprise. So initially, the Confederate attack, surprise attack, went fairly well. Routed a few units, really made life difficult for the Union. But their success, I don't know how to say it, they leaned too much into their success. So they were doing so well that they didn't pull back when they needed to, and so they got overcommitted. And so I'm going to jump to, let's see, the next time I have is 10 o'clock. Yep, so by 10 o'clock, yeah, so 2 hours later, lots happened, but basically the Union realized that they'd been ambushed. They figured out, and so they sent one division up this way and caught Rhodes in the rear. And Rhodes' position was good to ambush, but not good to get out of there. And so most of his division ended up getting captured by Ricketts. That was very well done on the Union part. By 10 o'clock, they still haven't pushed the Confederates off the hill here, but you can see the Confederates are falling back. But the Union cavalry had pushed in. The Confederates were pretty, they were set up on like these two prominent hills in the trees, but they were far apart from each other. So the Union cavalry got in between them, and you can see they're already threatening their rear. So they had to, even though they still had a good position on the hill, they had to get out of there or just be entirely cut off and trapped, and all their ambush was for naught. So you can see here the Union has a good position moving through the trees up the hills. Confederate in retreat. The Confederates back at Winchester are still just constructing their fortifications. And then up north, they're having a completely separate battle with the Army of West Virginia, trying to push through. So Generals Lomax and Lee, the Confederate cavalry, basically are doing what cavalry do best, which is kiting the Union. So stand and fight for a little bit and then retreat back and do it again. And they did really an excellent job slowing down the Union advance up from the north, which will prove pivotal, as we'll see later on. So I'm going to jump up forward again. Let's see, so the next time I have is 11 o'clock, so we'll jump forward an hour. So by this point, Rhodes is captured. The Union's advancing hard. Confederates, have a rear guard, but are basically trying to get out there with the Union threatening them all along the way. Some of the Confederates in the city started going out. I think, Gordon took them and tried to rescue them, which he did help a little bit. In the middle, Early was overseeing the middle ambush force, and he stuck around really too long. That's why Dondu got excited. This was his doing. So he stuck around too long in the first place, and then was really slow to get away. He kept wanting to turn and fight, and basically, really soon after this turn, he gets mowed down by Union and dies. So the Confederate commander is gone, and it took a while for the Confederates to figure that out. So they were without a leader, and it was a big blow to the Confederates. In the north, General Crook kept getting conflicting. So he has about an hour communication delay from Sheridan. which was humorous because with such a delay, it's just really hard to coordinate. And so um, at one point, Sheridan sent Crook orders to just fall back and come back south, which really delayed Crook a good bit just on its own. And then the Confederates are still giving them trouble. So just really slow progress in the north. We're going to jump forward again. Sorry, too many folders. I'm going to jump. So that's 11. I'm going to jump to 2 o'clock. Yeah, okay. So there's kind of a lull in the middle of the day as the Confederates are just in full-on retreat trying to get back to the city. A lot of little fighting here. By 2 o'clock, the Union had reached basically the Confederate really strong defensive positions. You can see they've got breastworks or fieldworks up on this steep hill with some artillery. They got a position here. They have defense in depth. They got some forts up here to the north. The Confederate cavalry, so they were fighting Crook, but then sometime during that lull, basically all the Union cavalry came up north, found out that the Confederate cavalry was vulnerable on their own, and basically started fighting them, trying to cut them off. And basically, they were a real threat. They came very, very, very close to cutting off or capturing all the Confederate cavalry. They got extremely unlucky, and the Confederates, for the most part, were able to get back into the city, which made a huge difference. But it's very close here. Let's see what else. So we're going to jump forward again. That was 2 o'clock, so we'll go to 4:15. So yeah, a lot of exciting things happening. So the Union, I can't remember which corps this was. There's right. So this was the 6th Corps, basically launched a major assault up this hill to take the Confederate position. They this is the point that they took it they made it with 2 brigades, heavy casualties, both practically broken, but they did it. They took the hill, and if they hadn't, it would have been over, because Confederates could have taken it and just hit them from above. But they did manage to take it with heavy losses doing it. You can see all the broken brigades, all the men running, streaming back to safety. But they kept the hill, and with it they had a toehold, and then recovered the men, sent them back up, and then were able to do a large grand battery down into the city later on in the day. Here in the center, the Union 19th Corps, you can see they're having a big fight with the Confederates. It's fairly even as a fight goes. But basically, this isn't showing it here, but within the next half hour, I think they get repulsed and are forced back, so the Confederates are able to hold. In the north, Crook is finally reaching the defenses. You can see the Union cavalry preparing to storm this fort. The Confederates don't have a lot of men up here, but they do have 2 strong forts, which take a while to take down. You can see the Confederates scrambling inside the city, trying to send reinforcements all these different ways. I'm going to jump to the end state. Yeah, so 6 o'clock or soon after is where I think we called it at 6 o'clock. It's getting dark. So this is the end state. So you can see the Union here is now fully atop the hill, bombarding down into Winchester. Let's see, this is Ricketts over here has cut off any escape to the south. The Confederates, though, they had a few brigades that really hadn't seen combat in the day, spent their days in the fort, so it's not great, but they do have some good strength, whereas the Union's pretty much spent after the day's fight. Confederates are still holding this position. The Union stayed there for the night. In the north, after a lot of fighting, Crook had managed to take Fort Collier, but then the Confederates launched a counterattack, and his men had been so spent from the day's fighting and then finally getting the fort that they broke in mass and ran. With that falling, the Union cavalry had taken this star fort up here on Apple Pie Ridge, but that would likely fall for the night. So the end result was a partial victory for both sides, which is probably less than satisfying for both sides. Basically, the Union wasn't able to take the city that day, but with the positioning that they had, they'd be able to take it tomorrow. But the Confederates aren't cut off either. They have this Romney Pike still available to them, so they could escape in the night that way, heading west, and live to fight another day. So they partially stopped the Union advance, but did not defeat the Union army, and are forced to retreat and leave the city. So ultimately, a loss for them, a partial loss. So it was a very fun battle to umpire. Both sides did really good. There's a lot of hijinks, a lot of fun things that went on in the details. So I'm done with my overview. I'm going to let the players kind of share their experiences. So I don't think we have a CIC here. So we'll start with Sheridan himself and kind of share his experience of the fight.
Yeah, so firstly, it was a fun game. Everyone did really well. The Empires did a really good job of, making it a very exciting and also a very confusing experience. I guess the whole maxim of Kriegsspiel is that you're, sort of in command, but you're not in control. And that's doubly or I guess triply true as a CIC with two levels of subordinates. You had corps commanders and then the division commanders underneath that. And on top of that, the deployments of the forces to start with the Army of West Virginia up in the north, and then the 19th and 6th Corps further south. I started with them in the south, so I didn't really exercise any control whatsoever over the Army of West Virginia. I suppose I underestimated the distances to start. And that really made it difficult to coordinate and communicate with Crook. And I was also getting sort of mixed signals, and there were some communication issues there, so I didn't really know what was going on in the northern half of the battlefield for quite some time.
Yeah,
but
it was funny to see because Crook was one of those generals that painted a rosier picture than what reality in his dispatches. So he kept writing about how he was like moving along quickly and defeating the Confederates, and in the meantime, like he's getting stopped and slowed and retreating, and so you thought he was doing a lot better than he was, and he's a lot less further along than you thought he was too.
Yeah, I was working on assumptions because I had literally no idea where he was until I want to say 1,500 hours, maybe 1,600 hours, when he was crossing that stream up north, like coming into Fort Collier. Yeah, I think he was around there. Mm-hmm. But before that, I had no real idea of where he was. I just had absolutely no idea. So it was very hard to coordinate. Really, I was just mainly sort of telling commanders of 6th and 19th Corps what to do. And then everyone else was just sort of trying to send me information when they could. I think the outcome of the battle was sort of decided just with the plans of each side, with us sort of concentrating in the east and with the Confederates doing that sort of delaying action, which just bought them enough time to hold the city until nightfall, which was good. I mean, they suffered a lot of casualties and we took a lot of prisoners, but it worked for the scenario objectives. So it's good on them.
Yeah. Thank you. General Lomax, would you like to share your perspective of the game?
Absolutely. So I was up in the north with the cavalry. I was under the command of Major General Fitzhugh Lee. And so sort of our plan was a delaying action. We expected to receive reinforcements a lot sooner. For the first part of the game, we I think for at least 2 hours of in-game time, we didn't receive a single dispatch. from anybody. And so we were just under the impression that we had to hold the enemy for as long as possible, which we ended up needing to do, but all of that battles in the south we were woefully unaware of. We didn't even get a rosy picture. We just got no picture of it. I think we sent one of our CICs down to go see what was going on in the city, and I don't even know if he returned. But our sort of plan, and we didn't say it outright, but we sort of just did it, was almost leapfrogging. So one of us would set up in one spot and put fire on the enemy. And then when they tried to advance and when they got a little close, that one would fall back. But we already had the other group of cavalry set up with their artillery, who would then continue raining fire on them while our other cavalry fell back and formed. So we were continuously putting a rate of fire on the slower infantry troops that couldn't get their artillery into position for most of the battle to counter us, unless they stopped and waited, and then we would just fall back, and then they'd have to move the artillery up. So it was slow going, and I think we saw a lot of success in that strategy, and I give Lee a lot of credit for that. I do find it funny is what you're seeing in this pictures, if you look at the Unions up there, is at one point in the day they just went back and had lunch, which actually strategically helped them in the end, because it slowed their advance on us, but it had us confused, and instead of going back to help our friendlies, we went to go check out this nice dining arrangement they were having, which allowed their cavalry to get behind us easier, and which got us in a very difficult situation where we had to fall back to the city under facing this whole army of cavalry that was waiting for us.
Yeah. Here's that Union cavalry starting to arrive to the west to see the Confederate position, and then I think Merritt's about to move north and see you up there. I will say, you guys, so in terms of saving the day, I think being able to delay Crook long enough was instrumental, because his attack on Fort Collier came after the two attacks down here in the south. And so it enabled the Confederates to hold here and then shift forces to the north to repel them here. Which, if you hadn't delayed them, all three would have come at the same time, and you probably wouldn't have been able to hold against all three on that day. All right. Well, thank you for sharing. We don't have the CIC early from the Confederate side, but we do have his chief of staff, which played an instrumental role. So, Brett, if you would like to share your experience up until you died.
Yeah. The plan was actually mine, and then was approved by Early, and we knew they were coming from one of three routes. And at first we were thinking ambush them somewhere and then maybe pull back into the city, but then we changed that to a full assault where we had attack them as early as we can and then fall back to various lines along the way and just do a delaying action, because if you attack them early in the day it sows confusion, and then the rest of the day they're going slowly. But the ambush ended up getting carried out into a full day thing. They sent a lot more than we thought along the route we were all on, and unfortunately, the original plan was for one brigade or division to be in the middle, and then we split up another one on either side, and they would close around the flanks and then ambush them on either side, and hopefully that would be enough to destroy them. But they had that secondary force at the river a bit north that were coming right at us, so we had our 4 regiments there trying to hold off me and Early, and they just kept coming and coming. I tried to pull back, but we saw the Union CIC very early in the day, so Early just felt like we might be able to take him out, so he kept trying to redeploy the lines, and we just got mowed down. There is one point where I think it was right here actually, where I saw the Union cavalry leaving, and then I'm like, okay, so if they leave, we'll go across the stream and try to get to friendly lines. but then I think that got misinterpreted because they ended up staying there. So then the order was interpreted as us charging up the stream, up the creek, and that really hurt us because our men were not ready for that.
Yeah.
And we had communication issues because, again, we got cut off by the infantry and the cavalry because apologies to Lomax, but we were sending him letters that just got intercepted at some point. And it just didn't end up well. We were not in a very good flank. We got cut off and was just never able to make it back to friendly lines. But I have to say to Gordon, who is here, he did a good job building defenses. That was the plan. We were just trying to buy him time to build as much defenses as he could before everyone got there.
Yeah, here's early dead.
And then, who was it? Let me look at the OOB real fast. Breckenridge. We had Breckenridge in charge of the defense force, and he was the relief force that was supposed to either help the cavalry if they needed it, or to help us if we needed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Breckenridge did a good job, played by Scott, taking charge after he found out Early had died. Alright, General Gordon, you want to share your experience?
I died when the enemy was really kicking off at the hill, but initially the goal was just to plan build defenses and just wait for the rest of the army to arrive, but they never did. I think we were going to build defenses on the south of the town, but that just kind of, we got told our men was exhausted, and then by that point we had to send a relief force over to.
What time did you die? Are you dead by? Oh, you're still here.
I died when they bayonet charged
up top the hill. Yeah. Yeah, here's Gordon's 16 guns taken off the Union Grand Battery. Yeah, but those defenses definitely proved instrumental in being able to hold, at least till the end of the day. Let's see, is there anyone I missed? Merritt, you said you don't have a mic, so I guess you can't talk. And Johnny was an umpire helper. I think we got everyone. Yeah, it was fun. I think the Union certainly communicated a lot as they worked their way west, trying to figure out what was going on, where everyone was. Sheridan did a good job coordinating them. There was definitely some confusion early on with units getting jumbled. There wasn't a lot of space to maneuver in with the Confederates so deployed so closely. So early on, the Union struggled, I think. Plus, I think even from the get-go, there was some plans for cavalry to go a certain route, and one of the cavalry commanders gave incorrect orders. It basically ended up where he wasn't, which caused some huge confusion. It got resolved, but yeah, the Union force in the south did pretty good. Of course, they got hit early on, but they bounced back, and then the fight for the hill was hard fought, but they did well with it. It was interesting because there's like two separate battles. They had the battle down here and then the one up here.
Yeah, and to I guess sort of explain why I never went north, I was very, we couldn't account for all the Confederate units, and with the forward deployment at the river at the Opequon, I didn't know if they had any forces in between me and Crook up north, and I didn't want to risk. I was sort of split. I was like, do I go north and try to link up with Crook and get eyes on the field there? And I was sort of split, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. And then I, as we went further west, and then I saw Early's body like sitting under a tree or something. I was like, okay, maybe I won't. Maybe I'm just gonna. That's one dead CIC.
No general is safe.
Yeah.
In our early plans, we actually were gonna put some people over there, but we decided against it.
Yeah.
For like the huge show of force in the east.
Yeah, and that was the other thing too. Was we discussed it briefly. I was like, there's a chance, knowing Zendos, my understanding of Zendos' play style is he's sort of a little more aggressive, and I sort of half expected some sort of action to try and catch us as we were crossing the creek, but I figured there was really nothing we could do about it except for maybe change the road we deployed in on. But it was really good. I was crapping my pants for a while there. Yeah, I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. But I guess the luck went our way. And
Well, I hope the ambush made this a really fun fight for everyone.
Yeah, it was fun to see. I think it was fairly well executed, at least initially. You guys were maybe too far apart to coordinate and support each other, but like I said, the problem was you stayed maybe 15, 30 minutes too long in every case, especially, of course, down here because roads got captured. But and it's hard to pull back right when you're winning and routing the enemy, but in this case, they were way outnumbered 4-1 or more, so they really need to just hit once and then get out of there and take what wins they can without getting caught up. But with getting overcommitted, you can see here, these 2 brigades are caught, these 4 over here caught. Of course, the CIC got killed. I guess that was it. Wagons lost and left behind. So it ended up being pretty costly, although it definitely did cause a delay. I mean, the Union didn't get over here till late afternoon.
Yeah, I mean,
assault.
Yeah, it's a bloody calculus for the Confederates, but it paid off for them. But strategically speaking, I guess it's like, was it worth it?
Yeah,
probably not. But that's also not the scope of the battle. So I mean, you can't really blame them for that. So.
I was really with all the mountainous or hilly forested terrain. I really, really did hope there'd be fighting over here, and so I'm happy that basically the whole map was fairly well utilized in the fighting. So that was fun to see for me.
If I could do this again, I would probably put even more forces for the ambush, or I would move Breckenridge, because originally we had fallback lines, like a phase line style, where they would build defenses that we would fall back to, which never really happened. It just turned into an all-out retreat. So if I did this again, I would probably put more for the ambush, and then I also would not be in command of the very far branch of the ambush as CIC. That was probably a huge mistake there.
Was there a reason you didn't fortify that hill at the end as much? Because that would have been an amazing, if you had a good third of the army on that top of the hill.
Which hill?
The one that got taken by the Union. That seems to be, to me, that would have been done with an extra line of infantry and then the cannon at the top.
I left most of the defense work to Gordon. I just told him, hey, just defend the city as best you can, fortify it, make it impossible to take.
Yeah, I just feel like that hill, if you'd fortified that, maybe with an extra 4 to 6 units of infantry, I think that would have been lost.
Yeah, that's true. If the Confederates, they didn't really commit more to that hill fight, and if they had, we talked about how narrow it was that the Union took it. If they committed anything else, they would have held it.
Yeah, because I feel like if you had held that hill, I feel like we'd be talking about a Confederate victory. That hill literally decided the battle in my eyes.
Yeah, because then their artillery's peppering them down here. This position would have been untenable because they'd be getting hit. Yeah, that's a good point. That was a very key hill.
Yeah. No, that hill, I feel like it should have been Fort Knox on that.
It was a risk for me to order the attack because what I could see, I only saw, I think, 1 battery and 1 or 2 blocks up there, which is, I think, 1 brigade. I think each brigade was 2 blocks, if I'm not mistaken. But I had a whole corps here. I had 6th Corps, which is the largest corps in the Army. And I was like, well, I'll just have them form up and take it. And it was a risk because, there were some guys, I guess, in the reverse slope and then guys in the town, which I guess I didn't really know about. There were a lot of fog of war issues plaguing me. But will I defend my pickets charge up the hill? I don't know. The exigencies of battle.
I do remember the turn. I think you're down here in the south, and I did the turn, and I gave you a little snippet of the edge of your Union holding the top of the hill, and your reaction
Yeah,
was pretty fun.
I saw the surrender tokens on the Confederate guns, and I saw the Union infantry at the top, and I was like, oh my god, they've done it! And I just started spamming the Union the GIF of glory where they're charging.
Yeah. I feel like if you even lost Winchester, if you held that hill and lost the top half of the battle, you probably would have been okay.
That was by the end. That was sort of my idea. I said we just need to take it and hold it and put as many guns as we can on it, and then just shell the city through the night.
Well, isn't the other hill just to the west of that the same height?
It is, yeah.
I just meant with the Confederate side, because that hill literally controls the main road in, controls your right flank, and the city doesn't, like, it's under the city, so if you lose that hill, you've lost the city. It's just such an important position, like, strategically. That's all.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting. It was a good battle, guys. Like, it was interesting.
We heard from Pendleton what he would have done differently. What would you have done anything differently, Sheridan, if you fought this battle again?
I'm not sure because maybe originally one of my orders, I think, to Crook was to sort of push southwest more than west because I wanted there was this gap between 19th Corps in the middle and Army of West Virginia in the north, and I wanted that gap closed as quickly as possible for communication issues and also so Confederates couldn't get in between us. But I probably should have specified that Crook should have gone much further south right off the bat, because that would have solved a lot of our issues, I think, which was mainly communication and me not knowing where he was, not knowing where Averill, which was his cavalry, the cavalry division assigned to his column, was, and I didn't really know what was going on up north, which wasn't necessarily his fault either. It's just, sending riders 5 miles or something, every turn.
He could
It's a huge delay.
maybe taken this crossing instead of this one up here or something.
Yeah.
It's funny because at one point, I think he'd gotten orders to fall back in the infamous lunch, and Averill was kind of fed up with that, so he just left him, but didn't tell him. So he went like wide west and then wide south, and eventually ended up here on Apple Pie Ridge and meeting up with the rest of the cavalry. But for like 2 hours, Crook just thought he'd been abandoned by the cavalry and was pretty angry about it.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. It was a very simple, I guess, deployment of one cavalry division per column. So basically, one cavalry division assigned to each corps, and they were supposed to scout and report back, and then the corps would report to me, and they could screen for the infantry and that sort of thing. And that sort of went out the window immediately because all of the cavalry, I think there was a mix-up with the deployment, and they all came in on one road instead of coming in and covering Emery's approach in the south, and that was during the very chaotic ambush part of the battle. So.
All right. Well, overall, for me, it was a very enjoyable game to umpire, fun battle to run. I liked very nice having multiple umpires, so I didn't get burnt out. Basically, I ran a turn about every hour, every fourth turn, which was fun, and I enjoyed the map and the battle. So really grateful to all the players who played and participated. And with that, I think I will end the stream.